Why did someone get buried in the garden? I quickly covered my daughter's mouth as she blurted out the question. It was supposed to be a happy day celebrating our new house. I worried Ruby, the host, might react badly if my daughter embarrassed her. My brother had warned me about Ruby's temper. Thankfully, I managed to smooth things over. Later, as we were leaving, I found my daughter chatting with something by the flower bed. Suddenly, Ruby swung a bat at her. Sarah, I cried out, reaching for her. My name is Avon. I'm 35, and I live with my 5-year-old daughter, Sarah. My husband works away, so we see him rarely. It gets lonely without him. Thankfully, my parents live close by, just a 5-minute drive away. We visit them often, but sometimes there are issues when we go over. Yvonne, there's a problem again? You're here so often, Yvonne. Isn't that too much? It's pointless for you to stay married. Those sharp words were from Ruby, my sister-in-law. My parents, along with my older brother Eugene and his wife Ruby, were living together temporarily. Eugene was building a new house, so they stayed with our parents until it was ready. Even if your husband's away, are you relying on your parents too much? Ruby, a year older than me, wasn't necessarily mean, but she was assertive and a bit snarky. I've never liked her, not since she started dating my brother. I still don't get what he sees in her. I never understood why she was so tough on me, her sister-in-law. Plus, she didn't seem to enjoy kids, especially my daughter. Grandma, let's play, Sarah said, pulling my mother's hand excitedly. Ruby made a clearly annoyed face. It's exhausting when Sarah's here. She's so noisy. Yvonne, you really need to discipline her more. It'll create problems later on. Those comments always made me uneasy. I'd only visited because Sarah wanted to see her grandparents, but Ruby's remarks always gave me a headache. The second issue was about my daughter Sarah. She has a strange ability to see things others can't and sense certain things. At first, we didn't believe it, but after she accurately found lost items and other eerie incidents, we started to accept it. It was a family secret we kept hidden. I never thought it would come out like this. Finally, the long cohabitation was ending. My brother and his wife's new house was ready, and they were moving out soon. I was looking forward to it. Living together had been tough. Ruby whispered to me, and I could only manage a weak smile. It wasn't just hard for her. I was relieved our parents' home would finally be peaceful. My daughter looked at me curiously. Mom, why do you act differently around Ruby? You're more relaxed with Grandma and Eugene. Well, you see, Eugene and I grew up together, but Ruby only recently joined our family through marriage. My daughter seemed unsure. Sorry, was that confusing? No, I understand. But it's sad. Sad? I asked, puzzled. Sarah nodded. It's sad that we finally became a family, and now we're going to be separated again soon. When Sarah speaks like that, it's oddly convincing. Separated. Could it be that Eugene and his wife are getting divorced? Well, it would be a relief for me. I feel bad for Eugene if he's upset. So they just finished building their new house, and now the idea of them divorcing so soon is hard to grasp. I couldn't understand it, so I simply asked Sarah to promise not to talk about it elsewhere and decided not to think about it too much. Some time after Eugene and his wife moved, we got an invitation to their housewarming party. We wrapped a nice gift of money, and the 5 of us, including my parents, Sarah, and me, went over. Eugene's house was about a 20-minute drive from our parents' place. Since my small car couldn't fit all 5 of us, we had to use my father's car. It was an old manual transmission, which made me nervous, but my father is a safer driver than I am, so it should be fine. It's pretty impressive to me that you can drive a stick shift, I said to him. When we arrived, I was immediately struck by the beauty of the place. It was a brand new build indeed. The exterior alone was impressive. The yard was spacious, and there was even a new flower bed near the bay window. There weren't any flowers yet, just soil, but it was still impressive. Wow, it's so big, Sarah exclaimed, running around the yard with joy. Hey, Sarah, I called out, trying to catch up to her, but Eugene stopped me. Let her play. It's okay if she wants to enjoy the big yard. Oh, thank you, I replied, trusting Eugene's judgment. I kept an eye on Sarah to make sure she stayed safe. While she stayed in the yard, Sarah wouldn't get lost or bother anyone. I found myself daydreaming about having a house of our own when Ruby came over, loudly reprimanding us from a distance. Hey, Yvonne, you should be keeping a closer eye on Sarah. Oh, did she do something? Sarah had been playing around, but she hadn't caused any trouble. I couldn't recall anything that would upset Ruby, but she seemed angry. Is it normal to let kids run wild at a housewarming? It's quite disruptive, don't you think? I'm sorry, Eugene said it was fine, so I thought it was okay. That's just Eugene being too polite to say anything. Don't take it personally. I couldn't afford to upset Ruby further. I had seen Eugene endure Ruby's outbursts many times before. I apologize. I'll make sure she behaves. I went after Sarah, who had just dashed past me. As I approached, I found her crouched by the flower bed, staring intently. All she could see was dirt. No flowers had bloomed yet. What's so fascinating, Sarah? What are you doing? When I asked from above, my daughter looked up and said, "Why is there a person buried in the garden?" What? After a moment to process her words, I instinctively covered my daughter's mouth. Of all things, she had to say that here during my brother and his wife's housewarming. It was meant to be a joyous occasion, but if Sarah said something inappropriate, it could cause trouble. Ruby had a temper, as my brother had warned me. It seemed my brother had heard, but fortunately, Ruby was engrossed in conversation with Mom and hadn't noticed. Look, Sarah, what a lovely house. Isn't it beautiful? Let's go inside. I caught my brother's eye, his expression mixed, and tried to distract my daughter as we moved. I kept my hand over her mouth, but Sarah squirmed free and said, "Mom, it's strange. Why aren't we helping the person buried in the garden?" Sarah, it's okay. I'll talk to Eugene. Sarah slipped away and ran to my brother, grabbing his hand and pulling him toward the flower bed. Seeing the look on my brother's face, who knows? Sarah's determination spoke volumes. Sarah, do you see something by the flower bed? Sarah looks up at my brother, tilting her head. Yeah, Eugene, can't you see? We need to help them quickly. They're calling for Ruby, asking for her. This caught both my brother and me off guard, and we exchanged surprised glances. Ruby was still engrossed in conversation with Mom. Ruby's name? Right here. My brother and I approached the flower bed. Upon closer inspection, the soil Sarah pointed to had a slightly different color, as if it had been disturbed before. A shiver ran down my spine as a chilling thought crossed my mind. What should we do, Eugene? We can't just ignore what Sarah said. Not because she's a child, but because it's Sarah. My brother fetched a small gardening spade from the back of the house. It seemed inadequate for digging, but it was all we had. When we tapped the soil, it felt unnaturally hard, as if something had been compacted to conceal it. My brother, perhaps frightened, was cautious and couldn't apply much force with the spade. Impatiently, Sarah grabbed the spade from him. Eugene, you're not good at this. Let me do it. Sarah, wait, I said, reaching out to stop her. But Ruby grabbed Sarah's wrist before I could react. Ruby had approached unnoticed and squatted down to Sarah's level, smiling brightly. Hey, Sarah, don't touch my special flower garden. Relieved at Ruby's cheerful demeanor, I pulled Sarah closer. That's right, Sarah. You can't touch things without permission. Sorry, Ruby. No problem, but don't touch it again. Ever. I sensed an unusual intensity in Ruby's demeanor. I lowered my head again, attempting to escape to my mother, Yvonne, with Sarah in tow. But Sarah pointed at the flower bed once more and exclaimed, Look, that person is watching Ruby over there. Sarah, you might scare Ruby with that talk. Please don't say such things. Whenever Sarah said something like this before, it left people pale and trembling. I imagined Ruby must be terrified to hear such things about our new home. Apologies, Ruby. It's just a misunderstanding by Sarah. I tried to make amends, glancing at Ruby's face. Despite any dislike I harbored for her, I felt sorry for frightening her. I thought I needed my brother Eugene to smooth things over, but Ruby's expression caught my breath. Instead of fear, her eyes were wide with anger. Sarah, is someone really watching me? Yes, and they're asking for your help, Sarah replied. Ruby simply scoffed and smirked, but her eyes betrayed no amusement. For some reason, Ruby's expression filled me with dread, and I shivered. I'm sorry, Ruby. It's fine. Just kids being kids, Ruby dismissed, though her tone lacked warmth. Eugene swiftly intervened between me and Ruby, diffusing the tension for the moment. We entered the new house with our parents and settled onto the plush new couch. Wow, it's so comfy, Sarah exclaimed. Her spirits lifted in the new surroundings as she sank into the couch happily. It seemed she had completely forgotten the earlier incident, and I felt relieved. We ordered some sushi for takeout, chatting, and enjoying the meal. Sarah must have been tired from all the excitement because before long, she had fallen asleep on the couch. Would you like to take her upstairs to bed? Should Eugene carry her? Really? Thank you. That would be helpful. We still have some time before we head back. It might be better than her sleeping in the busy living room. Initially, I thought so too, but then I had a bad feeling. I think it's fine. She might feel lonely waking up alone. Oh, she's already 5, isn't she? She'll be fine. She can sleep here. Yvonne, you're a bit overprotective, aren't you? Ruby murmured, smoothly returning to the conversation with my brother and parents. Despite the brief exchange, I couldn't stop sweating. After a while, Sarah woke up. It's almost time to leave. We agreed with our dad and started preparing to go home. As I cleaned up the table and washed the cups, my daughter tugged on my clothes. Hey, Mom, are we leaving now? Just a little longer, okay? We'll be leaving soon. You're being impatient. Maybe it was because she had just woken up, but Sarah seemed a bit cranky. I didn't want to deal with a tantrum right now, so I decided to ask my mother for help. Mom, could you please rinse these? Sarah is getting grumpy. My mother hurried over, but Ruby blocked her. Then how about Sarah and I play in the yard while we wait? In the yard? Let's do that. My daughter lit up at the idea of going outside. More than that, I was surprised that Ruby invited her to play. She wasn't known to be fond of children, so I was puzzled but grateful. Thank you, Ruby, but we're getting ready to head home. It's just until you leave. It's fine. Come on, Sarah, let's go. Yeah. Sarah cheerfully replied, taking Ruby's hand as they left. It's odd. Ruby isn't usually interested in children, Eugene remarked, watching them go with a puzzled expression. I know, right? Sarah and Ruby have met many times, but I've never seen them play together. Sarah isn't shy around strangers and would happily approach Ruby, but I always thought Ruby kept her distance. Yet today, Ruby was the one who initiated. Something felt off. I'm going outside too, I announced, rushing out in a hurry. Sarah was squatting in front of the flower bed, engaged in conversation. Ruby was nowhere to be seen. Intrigued, I slowed my pace and hurried over to her. Then, in the next moment, I witnessed Ruby swinging a baseball bat at Sarah's head with all her strength. It was a terrifying moment. I grabbed my daughter's arm, and we both stumbled backward. A metallic clang reverberated through the yard as the bat struck where Sarah had been just moments before. Eugene and my parents rushed outside upon hearing the noise. What was that, Ruby? Eugene, shocked at the sight of Ruby holding the bat, inquired. My heart raced as I held Sarah tightly. It had been too close. If I had been a moment later, Sarah could have. I couldn't even bring myself to think about it. I glanced up at Ruby, her expression a mix of anger and perhaps indifference. What happened? Eugene asked suspiciously. Ruby, did you try to hit Sarah with the bat? I can't believe it. Eugene approached Ruby in disbelief. Is it true, Ruby? Why would you? Ruby simply smirked. Come on, Yvonne. It was just a joke. Anger surged within me, and I retorted. A joke? Are you serious? If that had hit her, do you realize what could have happened? It wouldn't have been a mere injury. As I spoke, I noticed something horrific. The end of the baseball bat was stained with something dark red. Catching my gaze, Ruby exhaled. Sarah started it, didn't she? She shouldn't have said what she did. My eyes were drawn involuntarily to the flower bed. Could it be true? Was there really someone buried beneath, as my daughter had claimed? Fear gripped me, making my teeth chatter. My brother, concerned, kept me and Sarah away from Ruby. What's going on, Ruby? It's nothing serious, just a joke. Maybe I went too far. My brother gazed at Ruby for a moment, then decisively went to the back of the yard. He grabbed a small shovel and started digging up the flower beds Sarah had pointed out earlier. Hey, Eugene, what are you doing? Ruby tried to intervene, but she couldn't stop my brother. He kept digging until he unearthed something, leaving him speechless and clutching his head. Ruby collapsed weakly beside him. Eugene, Yvonne, call the police, he said urgently. Quickly take Sarah and go home. From my brother's unusual behavior, I realized Sarah's words were true. He had found something Sarah had mentioned. I immediately dialed the police. Surprisingly, Ruby remained subdued until the police arrived. She repeated, "It's all over," as if in a daze, but she didn't become furious or try to escape. Once the police arrived, I decided to stay with my brother while leaving my daughter with my parents. My mother was too frightened to accompany us, and although my father offered to stay, we would then be without a driver. "I'll be fine alone," I insisted, though it wasn't entirely true. I couldn't leave my brother by himself. "Sarah, listen to Grandma and Grandpa and wait here, okay?" "Okay, Mommy. Take care of Eugene too." "Of course." I couldn't gauge how much my daughter understood, but I reassured her with a smile. My brother appeared to be conversing calmly with the officer. I observed from a corner of the yard so as not to interfere. Suddenly, Ruby's voice erupted in anger. "I've already told you, I don't know anything. Fine, let's go to the station, and I'll explain everything there." "You're just trying to blame me? I won't go." The officer looked puzzled by Ruby's outburst. A female officer attempted to grab Ruby's arm, but she shook her off and sought refuge behind my brother. "Eugene, help me." My brother, visibly flustered, held Ruby's shoulder but remained conflicted, neither embracing her nor pushing her away. "I didn't do anything wrong. It's a false accusation." Though my brother may have wanted to believe Ruby, her recent actions, like swinging a baseball bat at Sarah, suggested otherwise. "Is someone watching me?" "Yeah, they're asking for Ruby's help." Ruby's response was a cynical "ha," with no trace of a smile in her eyes. Her demeanor sent a chill down my spine, and I shuddered. "I'm sorry, Ruby. It's okay. It's just kid stuff." Eugene quickly intervened between me and Ruby, momentarily diffusing the tension. We retreated into the new house with our parents, settling onto the plush couch. Wow, it's so comfy. Sarah's mood seemed to brighten in the new surroundings as she happily sank into the couch. She appeared to have forgotten the earlier incident, bringing a sense of relief. We ordered some takeout sushi, engaging in light conversation while eating. Sarah must have been exhausted from all the excitement, as she soon drifted off to sleep on the couch. "Would you like to put her to bed upstairs? Should Eugene carry her?" "Really? Thank you. That would be helpful. We still have some time before we head back. It might be better than her sleeping in the busy living room." Initially, I thought so too. But then I had a bad feeling. "I think it's fine. She might feel lonely waking up alone." "Oh, she's already 5, isn't she? She'll be fine. She can sleep here." "Yvonne, you're a bit overprotective, aren't you?" Ruby murmured, seamlessly rejoining the conversation with my brother and parents. Despite the brief exchange, I couldn't shake off my nervousness. Soon after, Sarah woke up. "It's time to leave." We agreed with our dad and began preparing to head home. As I tidied up the table and washed the cups, Sarah tugged on my clothes. "Mom, are we leaving yet?" "Just a little longer, okay? We'll be leaving soon. You're being a bit impatient." Sarah seemed a bit cranky, perhaps due to just waking up. Not wanting to deal with a potential tantrum, I asked my mother for help. "Mom, could you please rinse these? Sarah is getting a bit grumpy." My mother hurried over, but Ruby blocked her. How about Sarah and I play in the yard while we wait? In the yard? Yes, let's do that. Sarah was thrilled at the idea of going outside. I was surprised that Ruby invited her to play. Thank you, Ruby, but we're getting ready to head home. It's just until you leave. It's fine. Come on, let's go, Sarah. Yeah, Sarah cheerfully replied, taking Ruby's hand, and they left. It's odd. Ruby isn't usually fond of children, Eugene remarked, watching them go with a stunned expression. I agree. Ruby and my daughter have met many times, but I've never seen them play together. Sarah isn't shy with strangers and would happily approach Ruby, but I always thought Ruby kept her distance. Yet today, Ruby was the one who initiated. Something didn't feel right to me. I decided to go outside too. I rushed out hurriedly. Sarah was squatting in front of the flower bed, engaged in conversation. Ruby was nowhere to be seen. Intrigued, I slowed my pace and ran over to her. Then, in the next moment, I witnessed Ruby swinging a baseball bat at Sarah's head with all her might. It was a terrifying moment. I grabbed my daughter's arm, and we both stumbled backward. A metallic clang reverberated through the yard as the bat struck where Sarah had been just moments before.